Hi guys, today I'm here to do my April TBR because time is moving unbelievably fast and apparently it's already about to be April. So I'm not really ready, but my reading has to be ready, so let's go. I am filming this on the 25th of March, so it is still almost a week left of the month. So this first book that I have, I will highly likely start before March is over, but I doubt I'll have time to finish it just based on how my life is looking. So it will highly likely carry over into April. So I thought I'd talk about it here. And that book is The Group by Mary McCarthy, which is actually a book that I put on my 2021 project TBR. So I'm glad to be getting to it and making my way through that TBR. I've been pretty good at it. I mean, it's only been like 3 months out of the year and I've already done like half of the books on that TBR. So I've definitely committed to that TBR, I have to say. And so this book follows 8 graduates from exclusive Vassar College as they find love and heartbreak and choose careers and husbands against the backdrop of 1930s New York. And so it's a historical fiction, and it was actually written in the 60s, so it's kind of a modern classic. And so it's written in the 60s, but it takes place in the 30s. So I always find that interesting to see like what a past times take was on an even more past time, you know? So kind of the 30s, like through the lens of the 60s. I don't know what to expect. I've owned this book for quite a while. I've wanted to read it for quite a while. And I'm thinking it's gonna be like Sex and the City, but like 30s, which sounds awesome. I'm a Sex and the City fan, I'd have to say. Like, it's a little cringe looking at it now, but I'm still a fan. So I don't mind that, and I'm hoping that this book will be like a lot of fun. I don't really know what to expect, but I've owned it for a long time. I'm hoping it will be really good. Next, I have Acceptance by Jeff VanderMeer, which is the third and final book in the Southern Reach trilogy. I read the second book, Authority, in the series in February, I believe. Yeah, in February. And I was disappointed. I did not think it lived up to the first book, which is called Annihilation. And I've heard that the third book isn't much better, but I still, I have questions. I have things I want to know. And I just want to finish the series out. And if this is a disappointment, then I can be disappointed in the series as a whole. But I don't want to leave it just unfinished, because what if this actually does answer the questions that I want to know? So I don't want to miss out on it, but I do not have high hopes. So yeah, I'm hoping I won't hate it too much, but I don't have super high hopes. But I want to get it done. But it's a sci-fi, like kind of horror-y, like a creepy sci-fi trilogy. Next, I have Coraline by Neil Gaiman, which I'm a big fan of Neil Gaiman. I'm growing into a bigger and bigger fan every day. And Coraline is a book of his that I have not read. I mean, I haven't read most of his books, but this is a book I haven't read. I've heard it's supposed to be really good. I have seen the movie, so I do kind of know what to expect going in. It's a middle grade, I believe. And it is about Coraline, who lives in this house, and there's like a door to another world that's like kind of like her world, but like kind of not. Like she has another mother there and like another father, and it like gets creepy and weird. I mean, I'm assuming it is written for like children though, so I'm assuming it can't be too creepy because, kids need to be able to read it. But I don't really know. I'm expecting it to be a really quick read. It's under 200 pages, plus it's, big text because it's for kids. So I expect it to be a quick read. I expect to enjoy it. I expect it to be a breeze after what will probably have been a disappointing book in Acceptance. I expect this to, get me back on track so that I don't get too slumpy after Acceptance. That's basically the function of this book plays. So the next book that I have was like a complete impulse buy. Like I just heard about it and I was like, I need that right now, which is not generally how I operate. Generally, I take longer to buy books. I take longer to decide what I'm gonna read. I'm not a new releases kind of reader. I'm definitely a backlist reader. So me hearing about this book once and immediately picking it up was way out of character for me. But that book is Race the Sands by Sarah Beth Durst. And this is a fantasy standalone, adult fantasy standalone, which love a standalone. I love to have that just one and done thing. I believe Sarah Beth Durst is more known for her Queens of Renthia series. Is that what it's called? I think so. So I've heard some talk about that, but then I also heard talk about this, and I just thought it sounded so good. It's about like this fantasy like desert country or world where people like race monsters. They like ride monsters and like race in the desert. I just thought that sounded super awesome. Super awesome. And it's about like two women, one of which wants to be like a monster racer, and the other one is like a retired monster racer who's like gonna teach the young one all that she knows. Something like that. I don't really remember. I just thought it sounded awesome, so I just went and ordered this like real quick, and now it's on this TBR. I really wanted to read the Queens of Renthia series, if that is what it's called, by Sarah Beth Durst, but I haven't, felt really ready. Plus, I like to keep my series to a minimum, so, getting on that list is, kind of a hot ticket item. But, so I love that I can buy a standalone from her and really, like, check out how she's like and, like, what her writing style is like. So I'm hoping I'll really love this. It is, like, over 500 pages, but it doesn't look it at all. It's got, like, super thin pages, so it is a bit of a longer book. I mean, I've read a lot of long books in my life, but more recently I've been really into like that standard length novel, like 300 something pages. So over 500 pages does feel long to me, and I do get a little slumpy from how long it takes me to read them, but I am super excited about this, so I hope I can just breeze through and just love it and want to pick up more by Sarah Beth Durst, because I do have that Queens of Renthia series on my TBR as well. The next book I have is a classic that I've wanted to read for a long time, and it's short, so I'm thinking I should pick it up. I think it might have also been on my 2021 project TBR, but I'm not completely remembering. I think it might have been. But that's The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. And it's a small book, it's like 200 pages. It's a classic. I've heard it's supposed to be really good. I've heard there was someone, I don't remember who, on BookTube who said this was one of her favorite classics. And I mean, I know what the premise is, I know what the twist is, and like all that whole thing, but I don't think that's gonna lessen my enjoyment that much, really. Like with classics, I feel like you often go in kind of knowing what's up, But I really want to read it, both to be able to say that I read it. I think that's part of why we read classics, right? To be able to say like, oh yeah, I read that. But also I just think it seems really good, and people have said it's really good, and that it's like an actually really readable classic. So looking forward to that. Short book after a long book, so I always like to do that to kind of like break up longer books. Next book that I have, and the last book that I actually have physically in my hands, is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This I also believe was on my project, like 2021 project TBR, so maybe The Picture of Dorian Gray isn't. I can't really remember, but it's a book that I've owned for a long time and that I really want to read. And I have seen some of the TV show. I haven't seen like the whole thing. I don't even know if I finished the first season, but I've seen some of it, so I'm aware of like the premise and how the world is structured and all that. This is like a classic dystopian, if you don't know. I've really wanted to read it. I think the setup and the world seems super up my alley, which seems weird to say because obviously I wouldn't want to live in this world, but as a woman that would not be in my favor. But I do want to I love structure. I love categories of organization. And I think this book has a lot of that. It's organizing people into different categories, and I'm into that. I love a system. And this book has a system, so I'm into it. And, a lot of people think it's super good, so I want to read it. I want to be in on the know. And I don't know if I'm going to pick up the sequel that came out fairly recently. I'm always a little iffy about sequels that come that far after the original book, but we'll see. It depends on how much I love this one and how many unanswered questions I have after this one, I guess. Now, the final book that I can't guarantee that I'll get to. It kind of depends on how the rest of this TBR goes, and that I don't have on me, but it's a book that I'm definitely gonna order. So even if I don't get to it this month, then I'll get to it next month, And that is The Mysterious Affair at Styles by Agatha Christie, which is the first book. It was her debut novel, first of all, and it's her first book in the Poirot. I can't speak French, but the Poirot series, which is her like most famous detective, right? I know that you don't necessarily have to read her like detective books in the right order, like in publication order. I know they're like, you have to read this one before this one, but like besides that, you can pretty much read them in whatever order you want. But I still wanted to read like the first one first, just to get that kind of introduction to the character, because I'm assuming the character is more so introduced in that book compared to later books, if I would guess, right? So I'm gonna start with that one. It's like real short. It's like 100-something pages long. So I mean, it's not a big deal. So I can probably get to it this month. We'll see. Maybe I get slumpy. Who knows? And so I want to get to that one. It's like a classic Agatha Christie mystery. Like someone dies. There's a bunch of suspects. Like this person's a suspect. This person's a suspect. Everyone's got an alibi. You know, classic thing. I've only read one Agatha Christie in my life, which is And Then There Were None, which doesn't have a detective, so it's not really one of her classic mysteries, but I loved And Then There Were None. It was one of my absolute favorite books last year. So I definitely want to read more from her, and I think this one will be part of that journey. So I want to read this one first, and then if I want to read more from the Poirot detective series, then I think I might go with one of like the most famous ones. After this, probably Murder on the Orient Express, honestly, because that is like the most famous one. And I actually don't know like the plot twist or anything. I know that's like a super classic, so a lot of people know about it because they've seen the movie and all that. I haven't seen anything, so I have no idea what happens in it. So I think I could really enjoy it. But I'm gonna go with The Mysterious Affair at Styles first as my continuation of reading Agatha Christie, because I loved And Then There Were None so much. And I believe reading more Agatha Christie was one of my reading goals for this year. So I'm checking that off. Good for me. But I will be ordering that one, so hopefully I'll get to it this month. Maybe it'll carry over into May. We'll see. But that's the plan. So that went super fast. I cannot talk about books that I haven't read yet. I don't know how. It gets floundery and weird and I don't like it. So I went speed round instead. But those are the books that I'm gonna read. It's a bit more of a mixed bag this month than it was this month. You know, April will be more mixed than March has been, because March was almost entirely fantasy, which I don't mind, but if you're not a fantasy reader, that might be, you know, boring to you. But this month we got a little bit more of a mix. We got some sci-fi, we got some fantasy, we got some, you know, middle grade, we got some classics. Talking weird, I don't know why. But we got a little bit more of a mix. So I'm really happy about that, because while I do love fantasy, I do want, you know, other stuff in there as well. I do want a little bit of diversity. So I think this is a really good pile. I'm really pleased with it. My next video after this one will be my March wrap up. Yeah. It's been a kind of slumpy month, but I still got a fair amount read, so I'm not gonna have to be too embarrassed making that video. But that's that on that. I don't have anything more to say. If you've read any of these books, obviously tell me about it in the comments. Obviously tell me if you love them or if you hated them, I guess. I mean, it could be fun to know. But I think these are like well-liked books, except for maybe Acceptance. Acceptance, I'm not really, I don't got high hopes. I don't know. I'm hoping it'll surprise me. It might be a lot better than I think it's gonna be, but I don't think so. But that's all I have to say. Okay, bye. See you in my next video.